Well, hey everyone, and welcome back to another industry report. So, Sony, they've got up on stage and they have unzipped for all to see. And what's interesting is just how much business analysis there is to do on this one, and how Sony are going. I mean, they're going straight out the gate with a console variant like they've never done before that will almost certainly be netting them a greater slice of the pie when it comes to game sales. So that's interesting. There's the whole PS Now angle and how strong but unknown it is. So there's a lot of juicy analysis and a lot of games. So, of course, flick that like button to make the YouTube bot feel good. Smash that sub button if you'd like to stay up to date with what we're doing. And if you'd like our daily gaming news catch-up service, plus physical loot and a bunch of other stuff, hit up the Patreon. And with that said, let's get into the story. Alright, so let's kick off today by talking about the overall strategy from Sony with this event. And it's pretty clear. A lot of the appeal was in exclusives or timed exclusives, many of which are actually indies that are going to PC. But of course, it's Sony, right? So their strongest showing was indeed their first-party stuff, and that really is what got so many headlines. And as an overall show, I mean, it was pretty good. There was a lot of games, there wasn't just a whole bunch of people talking, so it was focused onto what people actually liked. Plus, it actually came off as being, professional, and a lot of, sort of work-at-home events have had, webcams and headsets, and really haven't felt that pro. Not the case for Sony whatsoever, which does have them looking better than the more recent Xbox event. As for the thing themselves, well, I think they opened up with GTA 5 to get that wider audience engagement. Spider-Man Miles Morales was obviously a huge reveal, though the one awkward thing is people not really knowing what that game was. We'll get into that in a bit. Overall, though, it was a well-paced event. It had a lot of big moments, and it was just this hour-long onslaught of games that did feel a bit closer to a good E3 presser. Now, of course, it still is early days, so in terms of practical details, there's a lot of stuff that we don't know right now, right? Like, say, pricing. We don't know what's going on there. Clearly, the companies, Microsoft and Sony, are still playing chicken with each other when it comes to the price points. Now, let's talk about analytics here, because what really matters is how well this event did. There were 11 million YouTube views, but the thing is, that's actually not even including restreams from IGN, Summer Games Fest, GameSpot, and the like, so that probably will add up to be even more views, right? So this is obviously done super well. Over on Twitch, there was 1 million peak viewers, and while sentiment is obviously quite hard to measure, it does seem like Sony did very, very well here, and it really seems like Sony adjusted based on criticism to past events, right? Like with the Xbox event, there was a lack of long-form gameplay and stuff like that. And just the webcams and stuff weren't that good. Whereas with Sony, it was just this big onslaught that I think did better just because of the sheer quantity of games that they showed off, but also how those games covered so many different bases and types of audiences. And then, of course, I suppose there is also the reveal of the console's rather radical, crazy new design that is going down in a very mixed fashion, but certainly is a major talking point. Of course, what really matters, though, is things like pricing, which we will talk a little bit about in the sort of business strategy analysis part of this video. But to talk about the actual video games, well, what do we got? So GTA 5 expanded and enhanced is due out in the second half of 2021. There's no exclusivity there. The Rockstar press email includes the Series X, but there is free GTA Online for all PS5 owners and some GTA money being thrown in for people who are playing GTA Online in order to get the ball rolling. And I think that makes a lot of sense. GTA 5 is this sort of platform game that's played by a large number of people, so they will want to know that is covered on the new console. Also, it just shows the insane longevity of that game. Then there's also Spider-Man Miles Morales. Now, this one is strange. Some people thought this was a new game, but then we were told that it's actually a remastered version of Spider-Man with an expanded bit of content to cover Miles. But, as it turns out, it actually is just a standalone game. Apparently, it is the same scope as something such as Uncharted Lost Legacy, so probably it's going to be quite meaty. Honestly, I don't think people will be too upset about having a shorter game. I think getting something so pivotal out for launch is going to be very well received, assuming, of course, the price is right. Then also, Ratchet and Clank. Now, this is a super important one for us to talk about because we finally got a good look at one of the core features of the PS5, which is the SSD. So the sub 2-second loading transitions between these extremely different environments are an extremely interesting thing. This is a real glimpse of what the PS5 is actually able to do. Now, the reason here, right, the big thing to talk about is it's not just the throughput of the SSD. What matters is that they got a bunch of custom hardware there that basically allows the RAM to be filled in a very, very, very small amount of time. And what that essentially means for this game is that the teleporting between worlds is actually something that does not need a loading screen. Now, normally that would need a loading screen because you can only hold so many assets in memory at once. Now, your problem there is getting the new assets that you need for your new level into memory takes transfer time. But what's going on here with the PS5 is they've got all that custom hardware to allow them to just stuff that RAM full with whatever they want, including those new tile sets, which is why that ended up working out and being so impressive for the Ratchet and Clank reveal. Certainly, though, like, that's a PS5 exclusive game, so obviously it will have its gameplay mechanics be designed to make maximum use of the PS5 hardware. I would imagine that big multi-platform games won't have as much of this stuff going on. Anyway, I think it was a clear success for them, and certainly the hornier parts of the internet will go wild over the certain lombacks that appeared at the end, so that's all quite fun. Then next up, Horizon Forbidden West. I mean, look, it just looks like a bigger, better Horizon game. It sparks, it speaks even to the recent rumors of there being a trilogy that was greenlit there, but basically, right, this is their huge game that, you know, you need to buy the console if you want to get it out soon. So, I mean, pretty obviously this will do super well for them given the reception of the first game. And then, of course, you've still got to remember, they still have Santa Monica Studio, right? We don't know what their next thing is. So they clearly have got another bullet in the chamber if they need it when it comes to marketing. Moving on then, there's Astro's Playroom, which comes bundled with the PS5. It looks fun enough. I mean, the Astrobot VR was pretty well received, so you got that going on. Now, moving on to just go through games a bit faster, there's Gran Turismo, Hitman 3, Resident Evil 8, Demon Souls Remaster, Deathloop, Ghostwire, and some other future teases like Pragmata and Project Athia, and then some cute games like Bugsnax and Little Devil Inside, then more artistic indies like Solar Ash and Jet. There really was quite a lot there, and it really was a really good broad showing of mostly stuff that we have not seen before, which really is quite exciting. Now, some of that is coming at launch, like with Spider-Man, but seemingly, I'd say most of it is just a general next year deal. Well, you know, like next year as in the launch year, right? So 12 months after it comes out. But definitely, though, there are some super early reveals like Project Athia, and we really just have no idea what's going to be going on there. Now, in terms of how we actually slice up this big content pie of video games, well, right, all in all, there was a huge amount on display. It covered a super broad audience, and some of them are exclusive, some of them are not. Certainly, it seems like there'll be a lot of reasons to purchase PS5, though. So, PC is actually getting quite a few of these games, although, and this is the bit that will suck for some, a decent few of them are Epic Game Store titles. Now, the Epic titles are Kana, Bugsnax, Godfall, Jet, Solar Ash, and then Oddworld. So, they're Epic Game Store on PC. We then have timed console exclusives that, right, they seem to be day and date for the PC and the PS5, but of course, timed exclusive for the Xbox Series X, which of course sucks for those people. And now those games are Deathloop and Ghostwire. They're both Bethesda games, it should be noted. And then Project Athia, and it's unclear if that one is ever going to be coming to Xbox. Now, for the actual exclusives to the PS5 system, now moving past those timed console exclusives, the actual exclusives, of course, are Spider-Man, Ratchet, Demon Souls, Horizon, Returnal, Sackboy, and Destruction All-Stars. But basically right now, some of that is just a little bit unclear in terms of how it's being communicated, but overall, it's an immense amount of games, and I guess one nice thing is, yeah, a whole bunch of them will actually make it over to the PC. Now, with that covered, with the games talked about, let's talk about business strategy, because this is what really does matter in the upcoming scuffle between Microsoft and Sony. So, number one, hardware. It's a pretty radical new design, isn't it? I mean, honestly, I think it looks like a router. I don't think it's that nice. I prefer the more simple Xbox Series X, to be completely honest with you. But what is interesting here is from the get-go, what are we getting? We're getting two different versions of the PS5. One of them has a disk drive, the other one doesn't. Now that's interesting. This is Sony's first all-digital offering, following up, of course, on the Xbox One the Xbox One SAD. It was kind of like its acronym, but that was the all-digital Xbox. It was a bit cheaper. So Sony are actually doing that. Now this is a really smart play, potentially, because if they can then cut the full price down for the digital alternative, that could look really good for a lot of people. And that could result in a tremendous amount of gained revenue, right? Because, I mean, look, the all-digital one to people may actually seem like the correct one to go with if, it is a good bit cheaper. Now, in terms of broad strategy here, here's the bit that really matters. If they can, through this all-digital version of the PS5, get another 5 to 10% of their sales to be, to actually be digital, right? Like on the PlayStation Store platform. Well, that's 5%, 10% of, game sales are going to be coming through the PS Store. And what matters there is that if you purchase a game, even if it's from a third party, if you do that in the PS Store, they get a cut of like 30%, right? Because of the 70-30. Now that is a lot more lucrative to Sony than if you went and purchased that game in a, in a physical store, because there's a whole bunch more just people taking a cut there. If it's directly on their platform, that's really way better for their revenue. So doing something like an all-digital console makes so much sense for Sony, even if they were to have to reduce its price point to the point where it would be even more of a significant loss leader for them. And I mean, look, if you do some napkin math there, if they can increase the amount of digital sales by 5 to 10%, that for them is like, a pretty strong 1.5 to 3% extra game revenue, which, considering how much game revenue actually is, that's a lot of revenue, so a pretty cool move. Now, next up, we got the DualSense controller. Now, it got a really cool feature trailer, and what's interesting to me there is, like, I love haptics on stuff, but a lot of the features of this controller are really hard to show in video, so I think it's something you really will want to have in your hands to see what it's like. But it's got the haptic feedback, the adaptive triggers, 3D audio. That's all pretty impressive stuff. I think the trailer did a good job of actually showing you how it will feel without you having it in your hands. But certainly, I'll say I'm more interested in the DualSense controller than the new Xbox controller, because the DualSense one does appear to be trying a little bit harder to do new things. Now, that said, there are some more downside things here, right? There's no sign of anything like Xbox's smart delivery system as well, and if they intend on double dipping with The Last of Us Part 2 or Ghosts of Tsushima like they did last gen, then they absolutely will look like the bad guy, and rightfully so, as compared to what Microsoft are offering their customers. When you add in the extra cost of rebuying a few games, well, the Xbox way then actually does start to look like a far better value proposition, and that is something worth keeping in mind as we delve into the analysis. Now, with that said, let's move on to another segment of Sony's business. So, there was no mention of PS Now, and that is interesting because PS Now is starting to look like just a worse version of Game Pass. Now, this is interesting because PS Now could really be Sony's secret weapon if Microsoft then tried to push Game Pass really hard, because Sony's focus, right, on the first parties, that could drive PS Now adoption really, really well. Now, they've already got 2.2 million subs for PS Now, so that's something that if they did a real marketing push or some promo deals, that could grow quite a bit. I mean, look, I bet that most people, even you guys watching this video, I bet you don't even know that with PS Now, you can actually download and play those PS4 games locally. Right? It's like, yes, it's a streaming service if you want to do it with that streaming thing, but if you, if you're on PS Now, you can just download and play locally. So that actually means that it's starting to feel far more like Games Pass, which is fairly interesting. So including a few months of PS Now on the PS5 at launch, that could be pretty huge, especially if a valuable first-party title is included on PS Now, like, say, Spider-Man. Now, of course, the Xbox Series X then coming out with maybe a year plus of Game Pass, that would be a strong way for Microsoft to fight back. And I mean, look, Microsoft's whole thing, I think what we're really seeing here is that they're all about value, right, with things like Game Pass. And then, of course, there's a situation where Microsoft, they are a really successful business. They've got more segments of their business that are in good profit. I'm pretty sure that the PlayStation unit of Sony is doing really well, but most of the rest of Sony isn't doing as well. So in terms of going super aggressive, even, losing money in something like Games Pass for the sake of growth, Microsoft will be more able to compete there. But then that difference is Sony have got those big first parties, which even if PS Now is a worse service, those first parties could be a massive draw of people. And overall for me, I think that's what's interesting. It does seem like the PS5 should be the console of choice for the majority of the game's audience. The only audience that's not super well covered by the PS5 right now is just a part of the gaming sort of group that's maybe just wants to play some shooters with their mates, right? For them, maybe, Halo and Gears and Games Pass might just be a better value situation, and maybe that's where the Xbox would make more sense. But certainly for the types of exclusives that Sony want to do, it seems like the PS5 is off to a really, really strong start. And I think what's big to me is that this is not a console versus console war. This is a console versus platform war, and I think that's the major mental shift we've all got to make when it comes to actually analyzing this stuff. Sony are really well equipped on that first party front. Their console is more marketed as a generational leap, right, in terms of like what the SSD is doing and in terms of the excitement they're trying to bring to their platform. but they may be a slower burn when it comes to value, right? If they don't have the money to upgrade the PS Now offering and do a major push there, give it out for free to get loads of growth, then the value proposition of the Xbox platform, be it on the Series X, be it on the Xbox One X, be it on the PC, well, that will be how Microsoft will compete against them. And really, that's the situation. I mean, Microsoft have got loads of games, but they just don't have that much hype. The whole situation here is people are basically saying, yeah, Phil Spencer's saying a lot of nice things. They've got a bunch of great studios, they've got a great value proposition, but they don't have Ratchet and Clank, they don't have Horizon, they don't have Spider-Man, they don't have God of War or, Santa Monica Studio. And yes, they do have, like Microsoft do have, a few massive studios, but some of those are actually very far away, it seems, in terms of their games coming out. So it's a very interesting situation. I think Sony came out here just, Insomniac basically just unzipped with that Ratchet, with the Ratchet trailer in terms of showing off the SSD performance and what that can actually mean for design. So a super strong showing. Certainly all eyes are going to be on Microsoft for how they answer this. I think Halo Infinite, Halo Infinite, I know it had years and years of engine development before they really sort of got into it, so if that is enough to truly blow people away, then I think we could start to see some big Microsoft headlines. But right now, in terms of just the pure video game, it seems like Sony are pretty darn strong. So there you go. That is it for our analysis of this situation. And if you want our analysis of another situation, well, The Last of Us Part 2 reviews have came out with a really strange, really strict embargo. And we have a full video breaking down what's going on, what people are saying, why they're saying it, and generally just how that could all shake out. So if you want to check that video out, it is also on the channel, went up today. Thank you very much for watching this video. Let me know what you think about the PS5 thus far in those comments down below. And with that, I'll see you next time.